The bus will drop you off at the hotel. Those words kept echoing in my head for a long time. I pictured a warm room, the gentle patter of rain against the window, the scent of fresh linen. The road was long, but I held on to that promise like a compass. Somewhere between the turns and the darkness outside the window, I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, the world was different. Instead of a sign with golden letters, there was a peeling wall. Instead of a carpet beneath my feet, bare, cold floorboards. The air was thick with the smell of dampness and old dust. Strange voices whispered nearby, but I couldn't understand their words. I wanted to ask where the hotel was, but my throat was locked in silence. They told me the bus would drop me off at the hotel. I wake up to a plastic wristband biting into my skin and a bed with a thin gray blanket that smells of bleach and something faintly sour, like old soup that's been left too long in the pot. The light overhead is flat, fluorescent, and merciless. Somewhere close, someone coughs, a wet, rattling sound. Metal chair legs scrape. A woman murmurs under her breath, the same two words over and over, as if stitching herself to the morning. "Ma'am?" A shadow leans over me. All lanyards and sensible shoes. "You with us?" My name? My voice is caught somewhere between sleep and dust. "Yes, please." "Clara Reeves," I say, and it feels like I'm introducing a stranger. My purse is under my pillow, zipper still closed, the way I've taught myself to keep it whenever I travel alone. I reach for it, feel the familiar lump of my pill organizer. Small mercies. "I'm Dana," the woman says, balancing a paper cup of water and a single tablet on her forearm. "Medication time." "You're late. Said you were tired and needed somewhere to stay for the night. Any medical issues we should know about?" "I was told I had a reservation," I answer, though the word hotel won't leave my lips. "It's too shiny for this place. Too clean." Dana's face does that careful social worker shift, soft, but guarded. "We'll see what we can figure out. For now, breakfast is hot." I swing my legs over the side of the bed. My knees protest like old neighbors convinced the street belongs to them. Around me, the shelter hums itself awake. Cots folding. Plastic containers sliding. A volunteer rolls a cart loaded with dented mugs. A boy, too small to look so hardened, watches everything with guard dog eyes. Beside me, a woman with a neat bun and a folded coat balanced on her lap eyes me curiously. "First night?" she asks. I nod. "You kept saying S in your sleep." "I don't talk in my sleep," I say, then hear my own voice, thin, stubborn, unconvincing. She fishes a peppermint out of her cardigan pocket. "Sugar helps. They keep the coffee strong here." Name's Lynette. The wristband is paper, good paper, glossy, cheap, printed with Reeves, C, and a barcode, like a small insult. I slide a nail under it, but Dana catches my eye from across the room. "Leave it, for now," she says. "Helps staff keep track." Lynette leans in. "Helps them, not us. Remember that." She pats my hand, skin dry as old paper. "First morning feels like you fell asleep on the bus and woke up underwater." The floor under my feet is rough, scarred by 100 boots arguing with it. A sign is taped to the wall, printer ink too faint to read unless you lean in. No outside food. No weapons. Quiet hours respected. I'm 74 years old, and I read the rules as if daring myself to break them. In the cafeteria line, a man with a barber's apron ladles oatmeal that has long forgotten it was hot. I carry my tray like it might accuse me of something. A volunteer offers bananas speckled with brown freckles. "Want one, ma'am?" "Yes," I say, adding 2 packets of sugar to the oatmeal to please Lynette, and the oatmeal itself to please. I'm not sure who anymore. Across from me sits a woman in a blazer, far too polished for this place. She's leafing through a folder but looks up long enough to say, "We're short on beds tonight." Dana, now beside her, nods. Church group is full. Day room's maxed. We'll have to sort. Lynette taps my wrist. Means they decide who's in and who's out by 10. You got somewhere to go? I do, I say, though my breath fogs over my coffee in a way that feels less than certain. After breakfast, the cots vanish into a storage room with a door that won't quite close. The space looks like a theater after the audience has left, stale, bright, disappointed. Dana leads me into a small office. A plastic plant droops in the corner. The calendar is still on last month. The chair she points to is heavier than it looks. Clara, she says, typing, just give me the short version of last night. I got on the bus. They said it would take me to the hotel. Who's they? Her eyes stay on the screen. The ones who said they'd handle it. My hands fold in my lap so she won't see them shake. My family. The word tastes like an ice chip. I had the itinerary somewhere. I rummaged through my purse, lipstick receipts, old peppermints fused to their wrappers. No itinerary. But my blue pill case is there. My ID. My Medicare card. My bank card in its sleeve. Maybe the driver, I say. Maybe there was a change. Dana's face says she's heard every polite excuse survival can invent. Do you know the hotel name? Seaview, I say. The word feels like it belongs to another life. And the city? Brighton Cove. She writes it down. We'll call when their desk opens. Before that, I need to ask about anyone who might have interfered with you getting there. I meet her eyes, steady, quiet. I've had a lifetime to practice. I'm not lost. I'm just not where I'm supposed to be. A faint smile flickers. All right, Miss Misplaced. We'll start with the hotel. The waiting is worse than the waking. I sit in the common room, a paper cup of coffee cooling between my hands, watching people drift in and out. Some carry duffel bags, some carry nothing at all. The television hums in the corner, a news anchor's lips moving without sound. Lynette has claimed a sturdy chair by the window and covered the one beside her with a scarf. She gestures for me to take it. See the guy near the door? Security, she murmurs. Won't hear you unless you're right in front of him. And that woman in the blazer? Nice until 3 o'clock. Then she turns into the rule book. I nod, though my mind is elsewhere. I keep replaying yesterday, the call from my son, the careful tone he uses when he's about to tell me something for my own good. Mom, it's just a night or two, he'd said. The hotel's nice, they'll take care of you until we get the paperwork sorted. Paperwork. That word had slid by me then, but now it sticks like a burr. At 9:05, Dana reappears. We called the Seaview, she says, lowering herself into the chair across from me. They don't have a reservation under your name. My stomach does a slow, cold turn. Maybe it's under my son's. They checked. Nothing under his either. The plastic wristband scratches my skin. I fight the urge to tear it off. Dana leans forward. Clara, I need to ask, do you feel safe going back to wherever you came from yesterday? I'm not going back, I say before I've even thought it through. The words feel solid in my mouth. She studies me for a moment, then nods. All right. But you'll need somewhere else to go tonight. Shelters are full. We can get you a church basement bed, but it's cold down there, and you'd have to leave by 6 a.m. I'll manage, I tell her. Lynette waits until Dana walks away before leaning closer. Don't let them shuffle you around. First it's one night, then another, then suddenly all your mail's going to a P.O. box you've never seen. The way she says it, I believe she knows. By noon, I've decided. I use the shelter's payphone to call my bank. Yes, I say, my voice steady, I'd like to cancel all automatic payments and revoke power of attorney. There's a pause on the other end. Mrs. Reeves, are you sure? Yes. I hang up and head outside. The winter air stings my face, but it's almost welcome, real, honest. I walk until I see the little bakery on the corner. The woman behind the counter, who's given me extra rolls for years without saying a word, slips one into the bag again. Sometimes kindness is the smallest rebellion. From there, I go to a law office, not my family's lawyer. I want someone new. Someone who has never shaken my son's hand or listened to my daughter-in-law's polished lies. A woman named Carver greets me in a cramped office stacked with books. She listens while I explain what I want, no access, no assumptions, and a rewritten will that reflects who has truly been there for me. Her pen scratches quickly, but her eyes never leave mine. By the time I leave, my phone has rung 8 times. I turn it off. I take the long way home, past the river, past the church where I used to bake pies for every fundraiser, past the line of trees that still hold back the wind. When I reach my steps, someone is sitting there. My granddaughter. Her eyes are wide. "Grandma, what's going on?" "Dad's freaking out." Inside, over tea, I tell her, not everything, but enough for her to know this isn't some sudden madness. She wraps her hands around her cup and frowns. "I've seen how they treat you," she says quietly. "I just didn't think you'd ever," she trails off. "Neither did I admit." And for the first time in years, I feel something close to lightness. I stood in the middle of the upstairs hallway, my hands trembling. The safe, my safe, sat there, the door hanging open like a wounded mouth. The air smelled faintly of dust and something metallic, as if the emptiness inside had its own scent. My knees threatened to give out, but I forced myself closer, peering into the hollow steel belly. Gone. Everything. It wasn't just cash. It was the envelope of old photographs my late husband had entrusted me with, the birth certificates, the small velvet pouch with my mother's gold ring, the one she'd worn until the day she died. Even the stack of letters my father had sent me when I was 19, every scrap of my life that I had thought was safe was now nowhere. "Maybe you misplaced them," I whispered to myself, a pathetic attempt at comfort that sounded absurd even as it left my lips. Downstairs, I could hear muffled voices, my son's, and another I didn't recognize. I froze. My mind raced. The safe was upstairs in a room I rarely entered anymore. The key to it was hidden behind the old bookshelf in my bedroom. Only I, and my son, knew where it was. My breathing turned shallow. I walked toward the staircase, each creak under my feet feeling like an alarm bell. Halfway down, I caught a glimpse through the railing. My son was standing in the living room with a man in a gray jacket. The man was holding a folder. "You're sure she won't check?" the man asked in a low voice. "She never comes up there," my son replied. "I told her not to. She thinks it's just clutter." My heart slammed against my ribs. My legs felt cold, almost numb, but my ears were on fire, burning with every word. "She's old, but she's not stupid," the man said, flipping through the folder. "You need to make sure she doesn't." "Relax," my son cut in sharply. "She trusts me. And even if she suspects something, it's too late now." I stayed perfectly still, afraid the wood would creak and give me away. My thoughts were spiraling. What is too late? What have they done? The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "You'll get your share soon. Once everything clears." My son's jaw tightened. It better be worth all this. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I backed up slowly, every step deliberate, until I reached the safety of the upstairs landing. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I saw the blur in my vision from my own trembling fingers. It wasn't just theft. It wasn't just betrayal. It was something planned. Something involving my son. And from the way they spoke, it wasn't the first time they'd done it. I pressed my back to the wall, my mind racing with pieces of conversations I'd brushed off in the past, the sudden visits he made to check on things, the way he'd started locking certain drawers in the study, the occasional phone calls he took outside where I couldn't hear. And then I remembered. 2 weeks ago, I had woken in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps upstairs. I'd thought it was just the old house creaking. Now I knew better. My heart was pounding so hard it made my ears ring. I had a choice: go down there now and demand answers, or stay quiet and learn lore. For the first time in my life, I didn't trust my own son enough to confront him directly. I turned toward my bedroom, closing the door softly behind me, and reached for the small, dusty box I kept under the bed, the one with the old tape recorder inside. I hadn't used it in years, but tonight, it would be my weapon. The night felt heavier than usual, pressing in on me from all sides. The walls seemed to absorb every sound, making even the faintest creak of the floorboards echo like thunder in my chest. I sat on the edge of my bed, the old tape recorder in my lap. My fingers hovered over the buttons, hesitating. I had used it once decades ago, to record my late husband singing in the kitchen. Back then, it had felt like preserving a memory. Now, it felt like preparing for war. Through the thin walls, I could still hear the faint hum of voices downstairs. Every so often, a burst of laughter drifted up, not the warm kind, but sharp and cold, as if they were laughing at someone. Maybe me. I waited until the clock's minute hand ticked past 11. The man in the gray jacket left. I heard the front door close and my son's footsteps coming up the stairs. Quickly, I slid the recorder under the pillow and lay back, feigning sleep. The door to my room opened a crack. "Mom?" His voice was low, testing. I didn't move. I kept my breathing slow and even, the way I used to pretend sleep when I didn't want my husband to know I'd been crying. The door closed again. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. Then I got up, slipped the recorder into my pocket, and crept out into the hallway. The house smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, something my son claimed he'd quit years ago. The smell led me to his old study. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by the blue glow of his laptop. He wasn't there. My eyes scanned the desk, stacks of papers, a few envelopes, and, to my shock, a small pile of jewelry I hadn't seen in years. My mother's gold ring lay on top. I felt a rush of heat in my face. Beside the jewelry sat an open folder. I leaned in and read the first page, legal documents. My name. My house's address. And then, in bold letters, transfer of ownership. My blood ran cold. I turned another page and found my own forged signature. It was clumsy, but close enough that someone who didn't know me well might think it was mine. My hands shook as I flipped further. Bank statements. Withdrawal slips. Transactions I'd never made, thousands, tens of thousands, siphoned over months. And at the bottom, stapled to the folder, a piece of paper that made my stomach twist. Buyer, Richard Holloway, the man in the gray jacket. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hall. I barely had time to slide the recorder onto the desk and hit record before the door opened. My son stepped in, his face hard. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was sharp, dangerous. I straightened my back. "Looking for what you took from me." His eyes flicked to the jewelry, then to the papers. For a moment, something like panic crossed his face, and then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "You shouldn't be here, Mum," he said, stepping closer. "You wouldn't understand." I swallowed hard. "Try me." He smirked. "By the time you figure it out, it won't matter. The papers are signed. The house will be gone, and you'll be taken care of." Taken care of. The way people take care of old furniture before dumping it. Before I could speak, he reached past me and closed the folder. "Go back to bed," he said, his voice final. "You're too old for this kind of stress." I left without another word, my heart hammering. But the recorder was still running on his desk. Tomorrow, I would know exactly what kind of son I had. I had spent the whole night turning in bed, replaying every detail of the day when I had climbed the stairs, ignored my son's warning, and seen the yawning emptiness of my safe. It wasn't just the loss of what was inside, it was the silence after. That long, suffocating silence between us since then. The morning light didn't feel like morning. It felt like a cold flashlight beam, exposing the cracks in the walls and the dust in the corners. My tea tasted like metal. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the thin curtains that trembled slightly in the draft. Every sound seemed louder than usual: the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the old floor, the tick-tick-tick of the clock. When my son came down the stairs, he didn't look at me. Just walked past, grabbed a mug, poured himself coffee. Like a stranger. "Good morning," I said softly. He nodded. Not a word. That nod hurt more than a shout would have. I couldn't hold it anymore. What was in that safe, I began slowly, wasn't just money. You know that. He stopped mid-step, his back still to me. I told you not to go up there. That's not an answer. My voice trembled, not from fear but from exhaustion. His shoulders tightened. It's better if you don't know. Better for who? For him? For me? For the past week, my mind had been circling that question like a trapped moth around a single light bulb. I put my cup down. The sound of ceramic against wood was louder than I expected. You took it, didn't you? I asked. No movement. No denial. No confirmation. Just stillness. I realized that silence could be more dangerous than any confession. Finally, he sighed. I didn't take it for me. The way he said it, it was almost pleading. Then for who? No answer. The front doorbell rang before he could say more. The sound made us both flinch. I went to open it. A woman stood there, thin, pale, with eyes that scanned me up and down as if measuring what she could take. Her hair was damp from the rain, strands clinging to her face. I'm looking for David, she said, my son's name, her voice low, urgent. My son appeared behind me almost instantly. You shouldn't be here, he told her, his voice sharper than I'd heard in years. The woman glanced at me, then back at him. You didn't tell her? My skin prickled. Tell me what? My son's jaw clenched. Go home, Mom. No, I said firmly, planting my feet. If this is about that safe, I'm staying right here. The woman gave a small, almost pitying smile. It's not just about the safe. It's about what's been in your attic for months. Her words hit me like a sudden draft of icy air. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice barely audible. The woman's eyes flicked toward the ceiling. You really didn't hear it? My mind raced back, those soft, strange noises at night I dismissed as the house settling. The feeling that someone was moving above me when no one should be there. I turned to my son, but he was already looking at the floor, avoiding my gaze. You hid someone here? I asked. The woman answered instead, not someone, something. The clock in the kitchen ticked on, steady and oblivious, as the air between us thickened. That night, I sat in my armchair with the lights off, listening for the sound of his key in the lock. It was past midnight when I finally heard the slow turn of the door handle, followed by the soft creak of the hinges. He didn't see me, he didn't even look around. He just walked straight into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and poured himself some juice. You're home late, I said into the darkness. He flinched, the glass nearly slipping from his hand. Jesus, Mom, you scared me. I'm glad I can still surprise you, I said. Since you seem to think nothing I do matters. He turned, the fridge light outlining him in cold blue. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know you've been lying to me. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Then he sighed. If this is about the safe again. It's not just about the safe, I cut him off, standing now. It's about you. The person you've become. The people you bring into this house when you think I'm asleep. The whispers I hear at night. The fact that my things are disappearing one by one. You're imagining things, he said, but his eyes slid away from mine. I stepped closer. Am I? Then explain the envelope I found in your room. My envelope. The same kind I used to keep money in the safe. Empty, of course. His jaw tightened. That's not proof of anything. It's proof that I raised a son who thinks I'm too blind to notice when he's stealing from me. He slammed the glass down on the counter. I'm not stealing from you. You have no idea what's going on. Then tell me. I shouted. For once in your life, tell me the truth. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His hands were clenched into fists, but his voice, when it finally came, was quieter. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I said. He shook his head. It's complicated. And dangerous. The less you know, the better. Those words made my skin crawl. Dangerous? To whom? I'm your mother, I reminded him. I have the right to know what's happening in my own house. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked past me toward the stairs. Don't go up there, I said instinctively. He stopped halfway up and looked at me over his shoulder. Funny. That's what I told you. The door to his room shut with a slow, deliberate click. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, the pale light creeping in through the curtains. By morning, I had decided I wasn't going to wait for him to come clean. If I wanted answers, I'd have to find them myself. After he left for the day, I went upstairs, not to his bedroom this time, but to the room with the safe. The air inside was cooler, almost stale. I stepped inside, scanning the floor. There were scuff marks on the wooden boards near the wall, as if heavy furniture had been dragged recently. I pushed the dresser aside. Behind it, I found something I'd never seen before, a narrow wooden panel, slightly loose at the bottom. My hands trembled as I pulled it free. Behind it was a hollow space in the wall, just big enough to hide a small box or a stack of papers. And inside, there was a stack of envelopes. My envelopes. Every single one of them empty. But there was also something else, a folded piece of paper with handwriting I didn't recognize. Just 2 words, written in red ink. Don't look. I sat on the floor, the paper in my hand, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might faint. Whoever had written this wasn't my son. I was sure of it. The handwriting was too careful, too precise. And if it wasn't his, then who else had been in that room? The house was unbearably silent the moment he walked through the door. I was waiting, seated stiffly at the kitchen table, clutching the crumpled piece of paper I had found behind the loose panel in the wall. The words "don't look" echoed in my mind, as if a warning from some shadow lurking in the corners of my life. He paused in the hallway, sensing the tension. His eyes flickered briefly to the paper in my hand before he spoke. You've been snooping. I'm your mother, I said, voice low but fierce. I have every right to know what's happening in my own home. He laughed, but it was hollow. Your own home? This place has never really been yours. Not for years. I slammed my hand on the table. Don't you dare talk like that. He took a slow step toward me, the kind of slow that makes you want to shrink back, but I stood my ground. You think the empty safe was just about money? It was about control. About who decides what happens here. Then who? I demanded. Who else has been here? He hesitated. His eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something vulnerable. People you wouldn't want to meet. People I'm trying to protect you from. I shook my head. I don't need protecting. I need honesty. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. I wanted to tell you everything. I really did. But once you start digging, you don't know what you'll find. And some truths, they hurt worse than lies. I stared at him. What truths? Tell me. He looked away. Your family's not what you think. There are secrets buried deep, and some of them involve you. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Me? He nodded slowly. Yes. The safe was just the beginning. I'm sorry for keeping you in the dark, but I had no choice. The weight of his words crashed down on me. I felt like a stranger in my own skin. Why didn't you trust me? Because you deserve the truth on your own terms, not torn apart piece by piece. I swallowed hard. And what now? He stepped closer, voice softer. We fix it. Together. But first, you have to understand everything. The mess upstairs isn't just clutter. It's a puzzle. And you're the missing piece. I looked up at him, heart pounding, ready and afraid for what was next. The next morning, the air in the house was thick with unspoken words. I barely touched my breakfast, my mind racing with the fragments of last night's conversation. My son was gone again, off to wherever his secrets took him, but I was left with questions that clawed at my heart. I decided it was time to dig deeper. Not just into the safe or the hidden panel, but into the very roots of our family, a past I'd long tried to forget. I found myself at the Old Town Records office, the scent of dust and aging paper filling my lungs. The clerk, a stern woman with sharp eyes, handed me a bundle of documents after I explained my purpose. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, and a few odd notations scribbled in the margins. One paper caught my attention immediately, a faded photograph of a woman I didn't recognize, standing next to my late husband. Her eyes were cold, almost predatory. I felt a chill run down my spine. Turning the page, I discovered a name, Isabel Hargrove. A name I'd never heard. But as I flipped through more documents, a pattern emerged. Secret bank accounts, property transfers, and a series of letters hinting at a bitter feud between my husband and this Isabel. She wasn't just some stranger, she had been part of our lives in shadows, shaping the fate of my family from behind the scenes. Suddenly, everything began to make a twisted kind of sense. The missing money, the cryptic warnings, the coldness in my son's eyes, they all pointed back to her. I had to know more. Back home, I confronted my son with the new information. Who is Isabel Hargrove? I demanded. He looked at me, eyes flickering with pain and guilt. She's someone you needed to forget. Someone who almost destroyed us. His voice dropped to a whisper. She was his business partner, once. Then she became something else, something darker. There were threats, lies, and when your father died, she vanished. But not before planting seeds that still grow in this house. I felt a storm brewing inside me. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I wanted to protect you. Because the truth would have destroyed you. But it's destroying me now, I said, tears pricking my eyes. He looked away. There's more. Isabel didn't just disappear. She's still out there. Watching. Waiting. A cold dread wrapped around my heart. The safe, the hidden notes, it was all connected to her. Then we have to stop her, I whispered. He nodded slowly. Together. The days that followed were a whirlwind. My son and I began piecing together fragments of our shattered past. Old photographs, faded letters, and hushed phone calls in the dead of night. Each discovery brought a fresh wave of pain and betrayal. One afternoon, while sorting through a dusty box in the attic, I found a small, locked journal. Its leather cover was cracked, worn from years of neglect. The initials IH were embossed faintly on the front. With trembling hands, I pried it open. The pages were filled with sharp, biting entries, confessions, accusations, and plans. Isabel's voice echoed through the words, her bitterness seeping from every line. She wrote of jealousy, greed, and a thirst for revenge that consumed her. A passage caught my eye. They think they can hide everything from me. But I am the storm that will not pass. The safe is just the beginning. My heart pounded as I realized the danger was far from over. That night, I sat across from my son at the kitchen table, journal open between us. We need to be ready, I said softly. He nodded, eyes dark but determined. Isabel underestimated us. The following morning, I awoke to the relentless hum of the city outside my window. But inside, a storm brewed silently, one born of secrets and unspoken fears. My son was already gone, his car's engine fading down the street before I could speak a word. Alone in the quiet kitchen, I turned the pages of Isabel's journal again, searching for answers, clues, anything to prepare me for what was coming. A sudden knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. I hesitated, heart pounding. When I opened it, a woman stood there, her eyes sharp, her expression unreadable. "I'm Margaret," she said, voice steady. "I knew your husband, and I knew Isabel. There's much you don't understand." I invited her in, curiosity and caution warring within me. Margaret's story unfolded like a dark tapestry, tales of betrayal, of a twisted alliance that had torn my family apart from the inside. She warned me that Isabel's plans went beyond mere revenge, they threatened to destroy everything I held dear. As she spoke, I realized I was no longer just a victim, I was a player in a dangerous game. Margaret's presence was unsettling yet oddly comforting. Her knowledge was a keyhole into the shadowed corners of my family's past, corners I had long feared to explore. She handed me a faded envelope. "Your husband left this for you. It was meant to be opened only if things went terribly wrong." Inside, I found letters and photographs, evidence of deceit, betrayal, and a clandestine affair that shattered the fragile trust one once had. "This explains the coldness," I whispered. "Between him and Isabel." Margaret nodded solemnly. "And the danger doesn't end there. Isabel's allies are still out there, watching and waiting." My son returned that evening, tension thick in the air. When I shared Margaret's revelations, his jaw clenched. "We need to be careful," he said. "They're always one step ahead." But for the first time, I felt a spark of defiance ignite within me, a resolve to fight for what was mine. Days passed like a restless storm, each hour heavy with anticipation. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a battleground. My son and I met with Margaret several times, piecing together what little we could from fragmented memories and half-truths. One evening, as rain tapped relentlessly against the window, we gathered around the kitchen table, maps and documents spread before us. "We have to act," my son said firmly. "Isabel's reach goes deeper than we imagined. We need allies, proof, and a plan to expose her." Margaret nodded. "There's someone who can help, an old friend from my past. He's a private investigator, skilled and discreet." I felt a flicker of hope. After months of silence and shadows, perhaps we were finally ready to fight back. But deep inside, a gnawing fear remained: would we be too late? The private investigator, a wiry man named Paul, arrived quietly one rainy afternoon. His eyes held the weight of years spent chasing shadows, and a no-nonsense attitude that immediately put us at ease. Paul listened carefully as Margaret laid out the tangled web of lies and threats. He nodded slowly, already formulating plans. "We'll start by tracking Isabel's recent movements," he said. "See who she's been meeting, what connections she's maintained." Days turned into weeks as Paul delved into the dark corners of Isabel's life. Phone records, financial transactions, even whispered rumors from old acquaintances. Meanwhile, I found myself becoming stronger, my resolve hardening. The fear that once gripped me loosened its hold, replaced by determination. But the closer we got, the more dangerous things became. One night, a window shattered in the kitchen. A rock thrown with purpose. A clear message. We weren't just fighting ghosts anymore. The shattered window was more than just broken glass, it was a warning etched in cold reality. That night, I sat beside the broken pane, feeling the chill seep into my bones. My son paced the room, fists clenched, eyes dark with frustration and fear. "We can't back down now," he said quietly. "They want us scared. But that only makes us stronger." Margaret arrived shortly after, her face grave. "Paul found something. Isabel's been meeting with some dangerous people, people who don't hesitate to use violence." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This was no longer a family feud, it was a war. We fortified the house as best we could, locked doors, extra lights, and Paul installed cameras in discreet places. But even with precautions, the nights were long and restless. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I received a letter slipped under the door. No signature. No return address. Just 3 words. You're next. The following days tested our patience like never before. Every call, every letter tightened the grip of fear on my heart, but we refused to show any weakness. Paul helped gather evidence, preparing reports we could use in court to defend our rights and honor. Margaret's experience and calm gave us hope. I started keeping detailed notes, every strange call, every meeting that seemed anything but coincidental. I learned to read between the lines, words that hid more than they revealed. Inns, the woman from the shelter, would sometimes call to check on me. Her simple words were a small beacon of light in the darkness. We discussed our plan, not to let Isabel and her allies destroy me. To stand firm for my name, my dignity, my home. And though fear sometimes tried to break through the walls around my heart, I knew this was not the end, but the beginning. One morning, Paul called with news that lifted some of the weight from my chest. We found something, he said cautiously. Isabel has been funneling money through a series of shell companies. It's not just a personal vendetta, there's a larger scheme at play, possibly to force you out of your home through financial pressure. Margaret and I exchanged looks. The pieces were falling into place. We'll need solid proof, Margaret said firmly. Documents, trails, anything that ties her to these transactions. Days turned into nights as Paul dug deeper. Each discovery felt like a small victory, a crack in the wall Isabel had built around her secrets. For the first time in months, I felt hope growing alongside the fear. My son stood by me unwaveringly, his presence a steady anchor in the storm. Together, we prepared for the fight ahead, a battle not just for property, but for justice, truth, and peace. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, without fanfare or dramatic confrontation. The lawyer's office was filled with a tense stillness, the kind that settles before truth breaks free. Isabel sat across from us, her expression a fragile mask of controlled fury, pride, and exhaustion. But this time, we held the power. Paul laid out the evidence with calm precision, the paper trail of financial transactions, the network of shell companies, and testimonies from those who had once been silenced by fear and manipulation. Margaret spoke with quiet authority, reminding everyone that greed and deception had caused wounds that went deeper than property or money. She spoke of the cost to family, trust, and dignity. Isabel's carefully built facade began to crumble. The lies she'd spun to protect herself were no longer shields but chains. Then, unexpectedly, she spoke, not with anger, but with tears. Her voice trembled as she confessed the pain behind her actions, the loneliness, the jealousy, the fear of being forgotten, replaced, left behind. It was a moment raw with humanity, a glimpse into the broken soul behind the bitterness. In that silence, something shifted. The room softened. We reached an agreement, not born from vengeance, but from a shared desire to heal and move forward. Isabel would step away, relinquishing any claim to the house. But more than that, we agreed to find a way to rebuild fractured bonds, even if just a little. My home remained mine. My dignity restored. And in the quiet aftermath, I found peace. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. Months have passed since that quiet day in the lawyer's office. The house feels alive again, not just with memories, but with new beginnings. I've learned that healing doesn't come from forgetting the pain, but from facing it with courage and grace. From choosing forgiveness, not for others, but for myself. My son and I have grown closer through this storm, our bond forged in shared struggle and hope. Margaret remains a steadfast friend, a reminder that kindness can blossom even in the darkest soil. Isabel's absence leaves a silence, but also a space to breathe, to rebuild. Every morning, as sunlight spills through the windows, I feel a quiet strength, a testament to survival, to resilience. I am no longer defined by what was taken from me, but by what I have reclaimed. My home, my dignity, my story, and above all, my peace. If you found this story moving, please like and subscribe. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are fought quietly. And the strongest victories come from standing up for yourself. Thank you for listening to this journey of survival, hope, and reclaiming dignity. Stay tuned for more real stories that touch the heart.